So welcome, everyone. I'm Ariel Cates. I'm the Director of Programming at Village Preservation. So glad that you are all here with us this afternoon. Um, just a quick bit about Village Preservation. We have been documenting, celebrating, and fighting for the preservation of Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo since 1980. We work to expand and extend landmark and zoning protections and stop inappropriate development while also encouraging appropriate development in our neighborhoods. We host roughly 75 programs a year, most of which are free and open to the public. Our events are meant to illuminate the cultural and architectural heritage, history and depth, and the value of preservation in our communities. We are a nonprofit membership-based organization, so your involvement and support mean the world to us. You can learn more at our website, villagepreservation.org, and please consider becoming a member or making a donation if you're able at villagepreservation.org/donate. So just a little bit of Zoom protocol. Me and my wonderful colleague Lena won't be visible during the talk, but we will be here. So please feel free to use the chat as you have been already. Thanks. To say hello, tell us where you're joining from, or to raise any issues or thoughts. If you have questions specifically for Susan, please, if you can, just use the Q&A function. It just helps us to keep track of them. You can do that at any point during the talk, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. So I am so delighted to be joined from far afar in Berlin by our speaker for this afternoon, Susan Hannaford. Susan attended the School of Visual Arts Film School in New York, where she met and teamed with creative partner Tom Scully. In 1978, she created and directed an underground off-Broadway award-winning show called New Wave Vaudeville at a rented theater space on Irving Place, where she met Stanley, say his last name, Susan.
Strychacki.
Thank you. Very beautiful and Polish, and got involved with Club 57. She also created Beulah Land, a gallery and cocktail lounge on Avenue A and East 10th Street, which showed hundreds of artists, starting with Keith Haring. Susan lives and works in Berlin and is dedicated to telling the stories of the history that she has witnessed and continues to live. Susan, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to go off camera, but I'm here, and take us away.
Well, I'm going to read off of paper, as I told you, because I don't want to meander. There's a lot of slides in this story. There were more than 1,500 people involved in events at Club 57. And because we can't feature everyone in this slideshow, we've set up a Facebook page. I think it's called Club 57, The True Story. It'll be up tomorrow. Anybody can go there, and we will add photos and flyers and try to include everybody that was ever at Club 57 as a point of reference if people are interested. So I want to thank you for inviting us, and I guess we can start with the slides. Club 57 opened on February 8th, 1978 and closed on February 1st, 1983. The company has existed in various forms since 1978. And in 2016, the Club 57 Artists Fund became a New York State nonprofit corporation with the original company partners from 1978 and 1979, Stanley Strychacki and Susan Hannaford, who work as co-directors of the company. Okay, the purpose of the company is twofold. Firstly, we preserve the accurate history of the accomplishments of the original club members through gallery exhibitions, online articles, and a permanent public memorial listing all former club members, which is a large project of Stanley's that he's been working on to complete for years. Secondly, the Artist Fund supports contemporary artists in all disciplines by mounting exhibitions and performances, by providing artist grants to help support individual projects, much in the same spirit of the founding years of Club 57. Regarding a permanent public memorial listing all former club members' names, We request absolutely no personal contact, but through a neutral third party, we request the return of our membership record books from 1979 and 1980, taken by a former club manager. It will be very difficult to mount this large, permanent memorial with everybody's name on it without knowing all of our members' names. And thank you for the return of our property. Okay, so one last boring thing, a legal notice, because our lawyer says to say it. Our company is protected by various laws, including the prevention of false narratives in print, all media, and exhibition. This protection covers the unlicensed and unauthorized use of the name Club 57 for the monetary or the benefit of outside parties. Okay, let's get on with more slides. I'd like to tell Stanley's story, which is pretty interesting. It's been implied on camera that Stanley fled Poland, Soviet controlled in 1972 to escape repression. But he didn't escape by, crawling through barbed wire or escape tunnels or anything like that. There have been many false stories about Stanley for decades, when he was only named as, quote, the old man in the corner and the porter who mopped the floors in the church. Well, without naming him ever, his true history and the creation story of Club 57 is far more interesting. So let's start on with Stanley's story. So here's the original Club 57 location. They're painting it gold. Stanley put a plaque up there with some members' names. I'm sorry, everybody couldn't get on the plaque. He ordered it, I didn't. There's Stanley in New York when he just arrived. Now, I also want to say something that, we were basically young in our 20s. Stanley was only in his early 30s when he came to New York. So the old man in the corner, he may have seemed old, but, maybe to a 20-year-old, he was old, but he really wasn't that old. Okay, so let's keep going with Stanley. So this is in Poland. He was an actor. He was in the River of Adversity. He showed me the amphitheater in Gdansk, Poland, like 1,000 people. He was also in the army where he, headed or organized variety shows. So, he wasn't unknown to theater and performance. He'd had that experience at a very young age. He decided he had a very successful construction company, and he decided he just, wanted to change his life. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving. He didn't tell his mother or anybody because, eventually they'd wonder where he was. But he took a luxury ocean liner. So it wasn't, escaping from the Soviets like that. He had free movement and he enjoyed himself very much. So there's more. This is his boat. They were much smaller in those days, and there's another picture of the lounge. This is what it was like. And he had a nice sea voyage, and then he arrived in New York. He had some relatives who lived on 14th Street. Now, this is his mother who joined him about a year later and said, well, if you're going, I'm going. So the family has always been involved with charitable causes. It's quite an illustrious family. A couple of his nephews are neurosurgeons that had hospitals. His great niece, is an official in the Arts Commission of Gdansk. So his mom came to New York, and they started doing some charity things because there's a lot. They raised money for the Polish Olympics, and that's how he found Club 57, because they were offered a space at that church to do their work. And the bishop from the church was quite impressed and said, hey, we have a social club in the basement. Do you want to do something with it? Because it's not operating. So Stanley said, okay, and he and his mother incorporated, started an official social club. And so we can go to the next slide. Some more charity work that Stanley did. He and his mother from New York had established a charity for, excuse me, the blind children of Poland, sort of a blind school kind of thing. They also, since Stanley had visited Rockefeller Center at Christmas time, he was very impressed with the Christmas tree. So he set up a new charity, which was basically at first supported by American Polish people, to put this giant Christmas tree in Gdansk. It's been there for decades. It's a wonderful tradition. It's, this is Gdansk. It's a fairy tale city. So that's their Christmas tree fund. Still runs. His nephew Robert runs it now. So next we can go. Okay. So Stanley and his mother, had registered with the city, just to prove that it's always been, a registered entity, some sort of legal entity. So I think we can go past that one. That's Stanley's mother and some theatrical folk. Okay, next. This was Chris Kremsky. He, as told to me by Stanley, not by Chris, he was a new immigrant to New York from Poland. He was very much into the solidarity movement. He wanted to meet young people of his own age. So Stanley said, hey, I have this new social club. Why don't you become the manager? So Chris did for no pay as a voluntary thing. So this is the first day on February 8th where Club 57 opened. It's the only photo that we have. This is Howie Pyro. His band, The Blessed, played there. There were 4 bands. It was free. Anybody could come in. I think beers were $1. There was The Blessed, the New York Niggers, the Communists, and I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the other band. So that's a rare picture. Howie's a big collector of rock and roll and obscure memorabilia, probably the biggest collection in the United States that I know of. So that's Howie as a young man playing at the first day of Club 57, and he remained a member of Club 57, forever. So next, this is our first DJ. This is Naomi Regelson. She and her friend Joe Plotkin, who became a music producer, basically, they were into music. She was a DJ. They brought in bands into the space. So next. This is one of the first events. That's Naomi dancing with Stanley. The band was the Furors. This event was called the Stay Free Mini Prom, which was produced by Lisa Baumgartner. She's a great member of the club. We'll hear more about her later. But she didn't even get to go to her own party. She had some family emergency and had to leave town. But we have a great picture. This is Lisa. She did many things. She was there before we were, in 1979. That's when I and the rest of my group came in. She came from Ohio. She was very much into this band, the Flesh Tones. They were playing in the basement club at Club 57. She came to New York. She met Henry Jones, and he became her boyfriend. He was making a film about the Flesh Tones, and she comes in later on in the story. So, Lisa this is Henry's film about the Flesh Tones. You can see it online. It's really an amazing film, all hand done before computer effects. So look it up. Next. There we go. You can just go through. Here's just some ads from the time. This was Lisa's magazine, Bikini Girl magazine. It's quite well known and collected. What do we have? Yeah, free admission, all beers $1. I don't even know who these people are, but it was the East Village Students Club before it was called Club 57. This play went on for a couple of years, 78 and 79. They were the big, renters that rented the space, Cowboy Mouth, and this comedy troupe. Another band, the Misfits, who are well known. They're very loud. They're good personal friends of mine. But what was happening was Stanley had no soundproofing at all. The neighbors were going crazy. There were the police would come. There'd be violations. Shut the place down. So next, here's another. This is Robert Patrick, Kennedy's Children. That's a very out of focus picture of Stanley and Robert Patrick. Another playwright that came there. This is a fellow, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. He had 4 rock and roll films that he showed there that people attended, and he's the first person to show films at Club 57. And I'll put his name on the a YouTube comment later. I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. I should have had it all on notes. There was always a question of, why was Club 57's Museum of Modern Art? There were so many clubs at the time. And I have to agree, Club 57 was not the center of the universe. It wasn't the best club there was. There were so many great nightclubs. But Club 57 was basically a neighborhood club on St. Mark's Place. A lot of kids got really cheap apartments in the area. And, there wasn't the behind the velvet ropes and doormen picking people to come in. Anybody could come into Club 57, and anybody could rent Club 57 cheaply and put on events there. So that's to address that. I think that the reason the Museum of Modern Art picked Club 57 because it was a film department, and they found a lot of obscure films because so many filmmakers showed their films there because they had no other place to show them. And they could restore and collect and assemble a whole huge group of lost films. And that's the basis of, it started out with, they wanted to just have the films of Club 57, which basically the films that Tom Scully and myself programmed in a lot of different, series that we held there. What else was going on? New York was in bankruptcy. It was dangerous. It was just Wild West. It was dangerous to ride the subways. And the same old shit, basically, was Al Diaz and Basquiat were putting these cryptic messages all over Soho and all over New York. So that was just to set the stage of sort of what it was like then. So we can go on from Samo. Now, about Irving Plaza. I found Irving Plaza, Tom and I, okay, I want to talk, there's another slide about Tom Scully and myself. And I'll tell you, okay. We were former film students from the School of Visual Arts. We were chairman of the Film Society, me 1 year, Tom another year, both of us, and then we, had enough. We were very, we graduated. Tom was in the Film Editors Union. I worked for various directors and production companies. And we were very much into film. We saw a flyer on the street, Made in USA. We thought it was a starred film, but we went to Irving Plaza thinking we were going to see a film. And what we saw was a band. And anyway, it was a great disappointment. It wasn't the film that we wished to see, but we saw this old catering hall, Irving Plaza. Now, Stanley, it says different, this is another story. Here he is with some of his shows. His early shows, maybe 20 people would be in attendance. They were local bands. Nobody had heard of them. He couldn't draw people there. You know, it's not true what it says on Wikipedia that Joe Plotkin, no, Tom Goodkind and Frank Rocchio started the rock concerts at Irving Plaza. Stanley did, because I've seen them and nobody was coming. But Stanley had, so Tom and I moved down to the Bowery, or off the Bowery on Christie Street at the foot of the Manhattan Bridge. I was very interested in the history of the Bowery, and I got a book about Tony Pastor, who was the former king of vaudeville. And at one time when we were there was restaurant supply stores, Flophouse hotels, Bowery Bums, CBGBs. There was nothing there. It was scary. It was dirty. But at one time, in Tony Pastor's time, there were huge vaudeville houses. It was like Broadway with the theaters there. It was really the center. So I was very interested in this subject. My mother, who was sort of disgusted with me. Yes, I was working in film, but I wasn't making my own films anymore. I was too tired. They were too expensive to make. At the time, 3 minutes of film would cost $5,000 to shoot. And she said, I don't know why you have a film education. You were making films. Why aren't you making films anymore? And I said, well, it's expensive. I'm tired. And she said, okay, I'm going to give you $5,000. It'll start you off. Just start shooting something. And I said, okay, but I put the money aside. I couldn't think of anything. You know, I wanted to make something that was more expensive than that. But I thought, but with this money, I can put on a variety show. So to make a long story short, we had a filmmaker friend, Amos Poe. He invited us to dinner. And there I met David McDermott, who's quite an eccentric person. And he lives in the past in an old-fashioned way. If you don't know this artist, it's hard to explain this, but that's what he does. And I told him, you know, I'm thinking of putting on a variety show, like the old vaudeville days. And he jumps on the chair and starts saying vaudeville, vaudeville, and sings some corny vaudeville song. And I thought, this guy's perfect. So there I am directing New Wave Vaudeville. So we can go on to the next one. So basically, I rented Irving Plaza. I went to the Polish Veterans. This is the vaudeville show. That's David McDermott. That's Donna Destry. She was our B-girl hostess who changed the cards and also, you know, sang and did some other things. So next slide. I'll just go quickly through the vaudeville show. Klaus, you know, the claim to fame is Klaus Nomi. It was his first appearance on a stage in New York, was at the vaudeville show, and he was a sensation. There's David McDermott as Pharaoh with tap shoes, and there's some of the audience at New Wave Vaudeville. So we can go on to the next one. There's New Wave Vaudeville. We did publicity stunts in the street. Tom and I was always great with publicity. Yeah, this is Harry Pyro's collection of an old New York rocker magazine with some pictures from the vaudeville show, so we can go on from there. Here was a contest during the vaudeville show. Win a dream date with Lydia Lunch and James Chance, which was quite amusing. We did have a contest. We recreated, if anybody knows this old TV show, The Dating Game. We recreated the sets and used music, and it was funny. So I think that's it with New Wave Vaudeville. Yes. So after New Wave Vaudeville, which ended in December of '78, Stanley was bugging Tom and I, you know, and at first we ignored him because it was like we had film jobs. We were making a really good living. You know, I'm going to give you the keys and you're going to take over this little nightclub, and I want you to recreate the vaudeville show. It's got to be that theme and films. And so we looked at it, we thought, well, maybe it can be a screening room. You know, we could show the film series. So we went there with our friend, the artist and set designer and performer, Frank Holliday. And he said, paint it black. So we saw this little basement room. We decided to, I think we can go to the next slide. Maybe the next slide. Oh, so we started a film club called the Monster Movie Club. We publicized it. We had field trips, we had contests, I wrote a monthly newsletter, we mailed it to people. We had quite a solid membership. So we had people coming in and learning about Club 57 through the Monster Movie Club. We had to close up membership after, I don't know, 250 people or something, because we just, not that 250 people ever showed up at the same time. Sometimes we'd have 5 people watching a film. However, it put Club 57 on the map. So next one. Next slide. There's Tom Scully with his projector. Next slide, please. There's me at the desk at the Monster Movie Club. There's a mummy down the bottom. Okay, so then what happened is Stanley said, he invited me to be part of his organization. And there's a reason for that. We can go into the next slide. I went from the secretary to the vice president. We switched roles later. Tom and I said, we can't devote our lives to this. We'll set up many different film series for you, but you have to hire a manager. You have to pay somebody. You can't be a volunteer. The first candidate, which was a very strong candidate, was an old friend of mine, Jackie Curtis, who was one of the Warhol people. He was a playwright, an actor, extremely talented man. He ran his grandmother's bar on 2nd Avenue, Slugger Ann's, for years. He had experience. He was also quite interested in the manager's position because he was a playwright. Most of his plays were produced at La Mama, but here, there was enough money basically as somebody's overhead for a month, because things were really cheap then. The salary was okay, but to have his own stage where if he put on productions, Club 57 as the house would pay for those productions, and he would have a watering hole, and I think if Jackie had been the manager, it would have turned out, the club would have been more like the Pyramid Club with film programs. Okay, so next. Next slide, please. So the next, but I had a friend who, a new friend who was a theater student, but had no work experience that we knew of. But she was very enthusiastic, and I thought she had great promise. I loved her. She was my friend. She was sweet. So I really pushed for her to get the position. But it came with Jackie could have gotten the thing right away. It came with sort of a thing. Stanley had to borrow 6 months' salary and overhead to keep the club going, which was thousands of dollars. It was a lot of money. And he said, I don't see, you have to supervise managers. And because suppose it doesn't work, I'm out of pocket. And I said, well, you have to give it time and etc. So I agreed to supervise for him the manager's work because he was doing other things. So next slide. So Anne got the job. Then we go back to Irving Plaza. Don't go back to the slide. It's okay. He said, I have a problem. I said, you do, because, you're not even making the rent for Irving Plaza for the Polish veterans. You need different acts, and you've got to find out who has the biggest acts that are popular. And we discovered it was Jane Friedman, who happens to have Hallow Gallery, which you know of. Jane Friedman's a legend. She's a talent manager of Patti Smith and people from Led Zeppelin and John Cale, and just name it. She's been involved with it. She also had sublet part of her office space to FBI booking. They were the Copeland brothers. They had a pipeline to all the really hot British acts, never been to America. So we went to Jane and said, look, we have this great venue. You have the acts. we'll give you a cut of the shows if you bring us the acts. It worked out well for both of us. So we can go on. Next slide. This is Alan Vega of the band Suicide and Kathy Gallagher. Kathy was she's still a very close dear friend of mine, and I miss her very much. I'll see you next time, Kathy. So Kathy was Jane's assistant, and we came to Kathy with a proposition: how would you like to lose your health insurance? Make so much less money, but have an awful lot of fun. So she left Jane and came to us, and it was very lucky for us. She took over being the bookings, etc., and it was a great arrangement. And Kathy works, I don't know, it's like, they represent Keith Richards and, these big rock star conglomerate business ventures, and she still does that. So next slide. There I am in the crowd from 20 people. This is what Jane and Kathy brought to us: a packed house all the time. Club 57's heyday before another venue, basically took over and outbid us on acts and this kind of thing. We had quite a few good years. And the reason I'm going so much into Irving Plaza, that shows Club 57 at Irving Plaza. By the way, this photo, and I'm sorry not to give credits, I'll do this, as a comment on the YouTube thing. This is by Joseph Zielinski, who chronicled a lot of the small club and Irving Plaza events. That's a photographer. So the reason I mention this is that Club 57 was a money pit. It never made money. It never made the manager's salary. It never made the church's rent. We subsidized and we broke our necks with these concerts. I hated the work, honestly. It was nonstop. It's one thing to put on a little show in a corner of a room than to have these huge productions. We didn't even have a bank account. We used to have to get change for the bars. We'd have our security guys run around to subway token booths, who used to be open all night, get rolls of quarters so we could make change, and the day after a show, there'd be a sea of cash all over Stanley's bed, and we'd sit like four of us and count them. So this was very bare bones, but we did it. Honestly, Stanley had a vision, and I believed in it too. And I believed in the work that Ann Magnuson was doing, and that it had to be supported. And we employed so many people who needed jobs from Club 57 as bartenders and other positions at Irving Plaza. But this activity subsidized Club 57. And that's how, by keeping those doors open, how so many great things were produced there. So next slide, please. This is Stanley at our office. And we had an office actually at Irving Plaza, ugly wood paneling. And what is that? Susie Sue. Okay, just keep going. It's just, these are some of the acts that we had. It's a very important, because, without funding, you don't have this art group. Here's the Buzzcocks. I'm sorry, I'll list the photographers as a comment on YouTube. James Brown. Love James Brown. Here's the Cramps. Let's see, next. Oh, that's Lee Scratch Perry and I think Richard Hell. Oh, David Johansen. He used to perform. He was from the New York Dolls at a little spot called Tramps around the corner, and his whole family from Staten Island used to come in and hang out there. It was our most popular, regular. Every concert we practically had, he was there, unless he was out of town. Okay, next. Okay. So this probably doesn't mean much to people not familiar with, artists of the time, but this was a big deal, right? And Jane used to create these great band t-shirts. I wish I had some of them now. Now, another thing about Stanley, not only does he speak 5 or 6 languages, he's not the, stupid unnamed man, that mops floors for the church. He's a world traveler. He's been to practically every country. He put on an exhibition in Gdansk about his travels. It's all true. Except Antarctica, he hasn't been to that continent. But there we go. There's Stanley in Thailand. We can just, there I am at Irving Plaza. It was exhausting work, as I said. Having to show up for a sound check and load in and distributing tickets, and with the skeleton crew, basically, we did this. Okay, so that's the end of that one. Now we go to the small Club 57. Ann Magnuson was hired as the manager. Here she is. She basically, her act or acts that she developed were impersonations. She'd do like a hillbilly character. This may have been like a Russian chanteuse. That was her shtick. Okay, next. Now, some of the better, actually fleshed out productions were, there's 3 men that were primarily responsible for the best shows at Club 57. This is a photo by Robert Carruthers. This is William Fleet Lively, who is a choreographer. Next, please. Then we have Andy Reese, who was our 3rd manager, and his childhood buddy, Frank Holiday, who, they were both like unbelievably talented, professional, showbiz kind of backgrounds, painters, set designers, writers, that really, I know Frank wrote an HBO special for Anne. Okay, next is Danny Johnson, who's the house DJ. There's Drew Straub at the end of the bar. Next. Danny created many in-club events. That's me during Putt Putt Reggae. That's Kenny Scharf, like hitting a golf ball off my fur hat. Next, Danny at Putt Putt Reggae. Danny and Naomi Regelson did this event. She's wearing a mop Rasta thing. She was always uncredited. That's the thing that bothered me in the press. We had the New Yorker down there, and why not mention the creators? This is a running battle. Why not mention the people's name who created these things, which problem I'd like to rectify. This is my partner, Tom Scully, dressed up as some sleazy promoter. This is during Lady Wrestling Night. That's Snooki and Tish from Manic Panic as wrestlers. Okay, next, please. Oh, this is great. This is Kenny Scharf and Drew Straub as the Bertucci brothers. They were some of the funniest acts. Kenny's like a natural comedian. If he weren't a famous painter, he should have just been a comedian. He created many shows. There were the Bertucci brothers. There was another acrobatic act he did with Min Thomas. All kinds of things. Okay, so next. So these are kind of events that we're having. Now, here's a picture of Drew Straub in the background, Keith Haring, Fab Five Freddy, and in the corner, that's Al Diaz. So hanging out in the church steps. Next, please. This is an example of Fab Five Freddy's graffiti work. Keith Haring was also doing graffiti in subways and the walls, and they all became friends with a graffiti group. Later on, the Fun Gallery brought them downtown. Okay, so we have Fab Five Freddy, and this is a picture by Andy Weiland. Okay, so we've got William Lively, we have Mr. Fashion, we have Bruce Birnbaum. Okay, next, please. There's a point about that people brought up during this moment thing. How about Black people? Well, we had Fab Five Freddy. There weren't many because there weren't many Black kids living in the neighborhood. And I think that's why. We had Mr. Fashion, and this was Thomas Jefferson Oakman. This was some gag we did for the a whole monster movie spread for the Soho Weekly News. Tom and I did, and that's Thomas Oakman. That's Wendy Wild as a victim tied up, and that's Screaming Jay Hawkins, who was a singer. So next. Another Black, if I have to name Black people, there were Black people, but, I mean, basically these were sort of white suburban bratty transplants or SVA students that, were involved with Club 57 at that time. So this is Basquiat and Michael Holman, who had a band called Gray. So next, please. And they hung around there. This is Lena Bertucci's Money Shot, and why people said that Madonna used to come to Club 57. Basically, come to an art show. That's her friend Martin, who sadly died. Okay, so next, but this is a great event by Min Thomas called Bongo Voodoo, swinging around dead chickens, voodoo chants, drums. Keith Haring, and another event. Okay, next. We have Keith Haring was very much involved. Here's a invitational, and he would always get these group shows of up and coming artists and have them at Club 57. So next, please. Oh, this was a great night. This was a poetry night. That's Keith Haring, and that's Zeng Huang Chi, who is known for being Keith Haring's photographer, and a brilliant photographer, and that was a poetry night. So poetry was part of Club 57, believe it or not. Okay, and it was very good. I just like that one. This is Alexa Delago and John Sex. John was very much a part of Club 57 and always there. So next, please. This is Wendy Wild. This is a shot by Andy Weiland, I believe. Okay. Oh, you asked about fashion. This is Sean McQuaid, or Ammo as he was known, where he would find found materials. Here's a wire dress. He wouldn't sew things. He would just put them together without sewing them. There's on the bottom left, I'm wearing a paper dress. It's just like tons of paper, and it just sort of, I don't know how he did it, but it's kind of brilliant fashion. And next, oh, here's the Amazon School of Modeling. That's Min Thomas in the skirt on the right. Somebody's wearing a garbage bag on the left. I think that plaid number in the middle is something by Stacy Elkin. Yeah, we had a house band. And this is from a still from a video film called Love Comics. And the guy in the center with the guitar is Kai Eric, and he was the leader of the house band. Next to him, guitar is, whoops, please go back. I want to identify those people. Nope. Okay. Then we have Jimmy Joe. The girl in the bikini is Danny Johnson. The guy in the white t-shirt is Steve Brown, and the guy in the blonde wig is Andy Reese, our third manager. Okay, that's finished with that one. There's an event I had called Casino Royale. That's from a clip from a film made by Alexa Hunter, Super 8 film, shooting the club. And I turned the place into a gambling casino with a croupier and the whole thing, based on James Bond. So next one, I'm just giving you a sample. This is very interesting. It's hard to get the focus on this, but this was a art show that Jean-Michel Basquiat had at Club 57. His invitation is like done with crayon and colored pencil, and quite different from the Basquiat style that one got to know later. Okay, next, please. A lot of films, a lot of independent filmmakers showed there, and this is quite a lineup if you know these people. Okay, next, please. Okay, there's Tom, and there's me, myself and Tom. Stanley would have these field trips. He'd insist that we go to dinner together, that we all, socialize outside of the club's environments. And that was a trip to West Point. Okay, next, please. Other than the Monster Movie Club, at the beginning, I'd say almost half of all of the month was filled with films because, we didn't have anything else to fill up the calendar. Ann Magnuson and I used to get together once a month. We'd look at the empty calendar and we would just make up crazy titles. Like I'd make up The Model World of Glue. What does that mean? I don't know until, I planned out the thing. We would just make up crazy titles and then create parties around those titles. And the club would produce these nightly events. This is why it changed all the time. And eventually people were interested by these goofy events like, putt-putt reggae, etc. And they wanted to produce their own events, and they came in, and then more and more people came in. And we didn't, have the burden of having to, because we had day jobs and film work, you get up very early. So, we didn't have the burden of doing all these things. But in the beginning, we did juvenile delinquent films, motorcycle films, Mamie Van Doren, Jane Mansfield, you name it, whatever we could think of, like basically exploitation films to fill in the Club 57 film program. So next, please. Yeah, there's Jane Mansfield. Okay, goodbye, Jane. Next, please. Okay, here's a collage from Stanley's archive website. And whoops, go back just for a second, please. And we have Jane Mansfield, Ethel Eichelberger as Medea was something else. And we have Tina Peel, which is a band and Debonair, and a band that always played there. So next, please. Okay, I just wanted them to be covered. This is our third manager. Ann Magnuson went off to, I don't know, have a Hollywood career, I guess. And Andy, who created so much of the brilliant shows, became the next manager. So next, please. What Andy brought that's one of his newsletters. You can also go to the second page of that. It's a picture of him as a young boy. What Andy elevated the professional work at Club 57. A lot of these characterizations, of Ann's were very one note, very funny, very good, but there wasn't much to them. Andy really brought in original work. And as I said before, Andy, William Frank. Okay, next slide, please. I'll give you an example. This is a production that Scott Covert, who's pictured wearing a wig. This is The Bad Seed. If anybody's ever seen that film, it's about like a monstrous little, murderous little girl. The set is by Frank Holiday. So next, please. There's Scott Covert, who did all these, all the work with Andy. And Scott is like a very famous painter now. You can look at Scott Covert, Covert, online and see his work. Okay, next, please. Also, notice in the background the Basquiat, flyers. This is Anita Sarko. She was at the time the most famous DJ, probably, from the Mud Club in New York. She came and did stuff with Club 57, which was quite generous of her, I thought, and how glamorous and beautiful she was. Okay, next, please. Oh, now we have Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman. They're known for, their Broadway work, their film work. They won awards for Hairspray, if you know what that is. This is one of their productions, The Trojan Woman. If you look at the list of all the participants, a lot of them Club 57 people. These were funny, great shows. And then this was one of my favorites, was Holly Woodlawn. She was another Andy Warhol character, you know, one of the superstars, The Sound of Music. And it was so hilariously funny and so great. Their lyrics, their book, you know, you can't beat these guys for talent. Okay, next one, please. Then we have Bill Landis, who, you know, there were a lot of eccentric sort of characters in Club 57. He wrote a newsletter and showed a lot of films, very offbeat sort of stuff. It's very hard to explain Bill. If you look at the Facebook page, we'll try to get into Bill's history a little more because it's impossible to explain him in a couple of words. Funny, interesting. Okay. Lisa Baumgartner again. Bikini Girl came back with this brilliant, and she did more than one of these series. She brought in Kenneth Anker, if anybody knows who he is, and showed all of his films, and he came as a guest. You know, it was very hard to get a hold of these films. And she did some brilliant film series. Okay, next, please. Then this is Keith Haring again, having a color Xerox show. I mean, just the amount of shows that Keith organized at Club 57 is amazing. And by this time, he was like well known. He was with Tony Shafrazi and Leo Castelli and putting murals all over the world and still like doing these things. Okay, next, please. Okay, I was, this is my wedding reception, although I was married a year before. It was sort of a fake farewell party. I left Club 57 when Andy Rees did because, first of all, I was exhausted from the Irving Plaza work and this work. But I got a really great offer from Jim Farad. He was opening a nightclub. It's his second, Danceteria. And he asked me to run his office, and it was day work. It was like, you know, I could get out by 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I was very happy for it. And I left Club 57. So the next, and I want to say something because there are a lot of fashion people from Club 57. I'm not going to get into it now, but I want to point out with the bow tie, that's Stephen DePietri. He used to work for Deanna Breland from the Metropolitan Museum, but then he was recruited by Yves Saint Laurent to head up their vintage clothing archive. So very talented, very sweet. And there's myself with a ponytail, and to my right, and my ex-husband, let's not talk about him. And to my right is Keith Haring drinking a Coke. Okay, next one. So the next manager was for, I mean, you know, I'm being funny, but, you know, for like 5 minutes. Okay, on the left, we have John Reed, one of the most talented writers. Honestly, you know, if he had lived, you'd know about him. It's some of the best short stories that I've ever read in my life, and I've read a lot. In the middle is Kai Eric, our next manager after Andy Rees. To his right is Jimmy Joe, who always used to play with him. And next, okay, Kai left. And to fill in, Kai left because he's a professional musician. He was offered some European tour to go with the band. He went, and I guess it was a friend of his. This is Ira Abramowitz. He filled in for Kai, but Kai didn't come back for months. And Ira, also known as Needles Jones, as a performance name and the name he likes, became the manager and, you know, stayed the manager until 1983 till the place was closed. So next, please. So here's Ira doing, I don't know what this show was. Oh, I want to say something. I got, because I wasn't there, Christian Joris was Ira's roommate and also did most of the booking of the club, most of the flyers. And nobody else seems to have a record of a lot of events there, but Christian did. So most of this, unless I say otherwise, this all came from Christian jurists. So, here we go. This is Lena Bartucci's, another, famous shot. This was the Basquiat that hung behind the bar, and there's Ira, which is kind of amazing. I think, yeah, that's Christian Juris who created this calendar and the programming. So next, Christian Juris. I've never met him, but we have an online, friendship. Here's one of his calendars. It shows some of the events at that time. I looked through a lot of these calendars, and I think the booking was kind of brilliant. There's a lot of variety of acts. Okay, next, please. Poetry. Okay, Robin Crutchfield is a well-known character. Now, Dani Johnson, who you've seen in other pictures, and her wife, Andy Violent, who you've seen a lot of her photos here, remained, true to this club, although a lot of the former first members were no longer there. And that's a photo of them. And I forget who took it, but I'll try to fill it in later in comments. Next, please. Here's another event he had, like a Hanukkah party. Next, please. Here's yeah. Okay, I don't know who wrote this play, but Ira Needles Jones, Holly Woodlawn, Dani Johnson, John Six, Wendy Wild, Ann Magnuson. A lot of people were in it. I'm sure it was great. I didn't see it. Okay, here's another. This is Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman, Trilogy of Terror. So another one of their original shows. This is non-writers reading their writing. So it was always, a lot of amateurs could just come in, and there's some famous names there as well. So next, please. They did a dating game show. Everything was sort of regurgitated. Motorcycle, juvenile delinquents, the pop themes. This is what Stanley recruited us for okay, this is a band, Art, who actually performed in the vaudeville show, and they performed there too during Ira's time. Next, please. Oh, this was sort of interesting. There were photos of it, but I couldn't really explain it. It was just like junk that you would find, and they took photographs of it, junk you'd find on the street, and then they exhibited the photographs. And I've seen some of them, and it's really, really very interesting. So next, please. This is good. Who's in this? Everybody also, a lot of the original club members seem to be in this one too. And then, okay, I'm happy. I'm working with Jim Farrat. My life is going the way I thought it should go. And Stanley calls me and says, the club hasn't turned in any money in 6 months. We owe the church. We can't pay the electric bill. There was club money, but it was stolen or went missing or something like that. Can you help, pull together a benefit for the club? So I went to Jim and said, can I have danceteria, for a benefit for the club? And he goes, yeah, and he gave me 3 floors. So I just moved into an apartment, totally empty, no furniture, but I did have a telephone connected. Next, please. So danceteria, thank you, Jim Farrat, for giving us that space. And I moved into this building. Okay, next, please. And in an empty apartment, next, please. There's an announcement of, come and have Polish food at Danceteria. I don't know, Danceteria put that press release out. And so I called on my dear college roommate friend, Peter Quailoff, and said, Peter, can you help me with this? You know, we're going to sit on the floor with legal pads, my address book, and a telephone, and we're going to call everybody that was ever involved with Club 57, and we're going to have to, like, you know, mark out this show and the times and who should. So we had a great response. Keith Haring was selling paintings for $150. They were granted small paintings, and nobody had enough money to buy them. I keep this slide up for a moment if people just even want to, you know, read the talent involved in this. We had shows nonstop on different floors, different performances. It was really quite amazing. And people really came through for the club. So, I mean, it's just the who's who of everybody involved, you know. It's just the love that people had from Club 57, because it was a place of love and variety and acceptance, mostly, you know, of a lot of people. It wasn't about one star. It was a collective of anybody and everybody. And anybody who says, oh, well, this is the only, you know, star or the star manager, they're wrong. Okay, next, please. Okay, so Ariel from Village Preservation wanted to know what I did after that. In '82, I opened a place called Beulah Land on Avenue A. At that time, there were the East Village Gallery sprung up all over the place. You know, the brilliant Fun Gallery, which, you know, changed art. Gracie Mansion was across the street from me on Avenue A. I had a lot of performances. I showed, you know, hundreds of artists who then, you know, the East Village Gallery sort of happened, you know, I think it happened, all these galleries, because nobody could get into Soho. And then the East Village galleries, you know, needed slides. They had months to decide whether you could have a show or not. And I would just say, can you bring over a picture, you know? And I'd look at it and I'd say, okay, you've got a show. You know, very few people did I ever turn down. And then famous people started showing, which sort of amazed me. They had gallery representation. What are they coming to me for? But they did, you know, I guess it was fun. And there's a great book, Beulah Land by Paige Powell, who was Andy Warhol's Interview magazine person, and she's a brilliant photographer. So next, please. So that was Beulah Land. There's a picture of Bruno Schmidt, a Club 57 artist, and myself outside of Beulah Land. It's a photo taken by Tseng Kwan Chi, Keith Haring's photographer. So next. Next, please. Okay, so now we've come to the Club 57 Artist Fund has made its own calendar. You know, it seems to be a hit with, like, Silicon Valley people buy this. You know, it's digitally, you know, printed. It's very expensive to print this thing, but it's fine details. And it basically shows the variety of film, special events, theater, and bands at Irving Plaza, because without Irving Plaza, there would have been no Club 57. Okay, next, please. So we offer an official lifetime membership too, and it's pretty cheap. You can check it out online on our Artist Fund website. We meet every 2 years in a big restaurant. The last one was like one of these Chinese palaces downtown. And, you know, we have a lot of fun. And once you're a member, you're invited to dinner with us and, you know, catch up on old times and make new plans. So next, please. This is our website. Okay, we've seen this before. Now I sort of have, this is, I think, kind of what I wanted to say here. I have to, did I do this? I think I did this already. I'm just going to skip it. Okay. Okay, this is our next project. Club 57 wants to reopen in New York City. This is a building, we have a couple of, picks, but this is our favorite building. This is what we desire. It's a church building. And what we want to do, we're looking for an investment partner. We're looking for $10 million, which, considering New York real estate, this isn't so bad. What we would do is we will make it more famous than the small Club 57 ever was. We'll make it a world-class art center and put our investor's name on it as a patron of the arts. So there's more pictures there. Here's the inside. Our plans are to these beautiful old paintings, and there's stars in the ceiling. There's a whole balcony that wraps around upstairs. Yeah. So we'd remove the pews. We would basically, have an engineer design, panels that would come down to cover the paintings. We'd use that as gallery exhibition space to hang art, and for film projection, for slides, for theater, this kind of thing. Remove and store the pews, and we'd have a performance space. There are a couple of floors of this building. The gallery upstairs, would be audience gallery. So let's go. So if anyone is interested in buying this building, which is quite, they own the deed on the building, that's their security. And it will only increase in value in New York real estate. It's quite a bargain, and we have business plans, and we're looking for investors, because we will open, if not in this first desired location, in another location in New York. So that's about, and here is Miss April Palmieri, brilliant photographer. I think she's wearing her camera. Stanley Strychacki, and Katie Kay, who's a fashion designer and performer. Next, this is Stanley and myself 40 years later. We're at Debonair's Christmas party, I think. She collects vintage things, you can see in her china cabinet. And I think that's it. If there are any serious investors, this is my email address. Contact me, and we'll take it from there. And I think that's it, Ariel. Thank you. Is there Q&A coming up?
There sure is. Susan, thank you so much. Okay, so we just have a couple of questions. Thanks everyone so much for being here. And if you have more questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A. Okay. So Michelle was looking for clarification. Can you repeat the dates that Club 57 was in operation?
Sure. It opened on February 8th, 1978, and it closed on February 1st, 1983.
Amazing. Okay, and Lisa wanted to know how you picked the name for Beulah Land.
Oh, it's Beulah Land.
Beulah Land, thank you.
It was a partner of mine. It's literary. It has to do with, it's a famous book that, I don't know, way before, many generations ago, called Beulah Land. There's also a hymn. What it means is like the promised land. And, my partner was a poet, and he just thought that was the best name. And honestly, he was putting in the money. He could have called it, anything. But it was Beulah Land. But when I built it there on Avenue A, some people felt intimidated and said, this is racist, because there was a a maid, a Black character in the movies called Beulah, Mae West said, Beulah, peel me a grape, and they, rocks through the window, you're racist and all that stuff, and it had nothing to do with it. But, and then the mob came in, to fix my windows, but that's a whole other story.
Maybe for next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got a couple of suggestions, which I'll send along to you, for
Thank you.
for the church building. Remind us where it's located. It's in the East Village, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll put it on I'll put all the information when this goes onto YouTube, the photographers I missed, the stuff I forgot, I'll put that all up there, and I will give, but don't steal that building away from us, please. I will give the information. There's a great, your website, because they're fighting for landmark status, which I totally agree with.
I was just
Otherwise,
gonna
the panels to cover and preserve everything. Also, I forgot to mention, we wanted to still offer that as a place of worship on Sundays to the local community, so they don't have to lose their church. They may need money, and that's why they're selling it. But we'll raise those panels. We'll let them come in and worship. The pews will be gone. We'll have folding chairs. And also in the basement space, which I don't want to get into, too many details. We'd like to have a one day a week, like food pantry for the community, for people who need groceries, basically. And we could partner with, some local charity, because I don't know, we have always been a community, the people from Club 57. It's very important to be part of the community where you're located. I think, I can't even recognize Avenue C. It's so fancy. But not everybody is rich, and some people do need food. And when you have a space like this, use it.
Yeah.
And help others. So
I hope that this dream gets to become a reality. And
it will be world famous. I guarantee you that for sure. And it's a bargain, 10 million to totally renovate. I mean, you need plumbing, wiring, ventilation, you need an elevator, you need toilets, you need a lot of things. But it's really a good investment. It's a steal.
Love that pitch. Francie, we're gonna find the exact address, and we're gonna send out a follow-up email also with just some links to some of the things that Susan has mentioned over the course of her talk, and just a little survey. We always like to get feedback on our programs. We appreciate you taking the time to do that, and also to be here. I'm gonna wrap us for the afternoon. Susan, that was so amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good.
Thank you for many other things, and thanks, Lena. And other things to really help Stanley with. Yeah, there she is, Lena. You really helped Stanley with this plaque. We've been involved with your organization for years.
Many years. Yeah.
And we're working on some other projects, we hope, with you too.
Yes, can't wait. Cannot wait. Yeah. We'll keep everybody posted.
Okay.
And we'll talk to you soon. Take good
Okay.
care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.